Internet, and welcome to Geek Talk. I'm going to be your host, James, and today, guys, we have a very special guest, a gentleman I'm happy to say I'm a huge fan of, the one, the only, Louis Lovhaug, aka Linkara from Atop the Fourth Wall where bad comics burn. How are we doing today, Louis?
Uh, I am doing just fine. How are you doing?
Doing good, man, doing good. Just right off the bat, I really want to thank you for coming and doing this podcast with me. I really do appreciate it, and like I said, I'm a huge fan. So thank you yet again.
No problem at all. The real problem is when a lot of people want to do podcast interviews with me around the holiday season and through February, because that's when I usually have most of my intense storyline stuff going on the show. So I have zero time to do interviews and whatnot.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, you've been actually very busy here lately. You've done the whole Entity story arc. You've had Cybermats on the show. You've been to YomaCon. You've been doing crossovers, auctions, and of course, been up in DC dealing with SOPA. Where do you actually find the time to sleep, man?
Oh, whenever I get tired. A common problem with me, especially since I work from home and set my own schedule, is that I tend to not have a set sleep schedule. I always try to fix it so that it's normal, but it happens on occasion where I will be up until like 6 in the morning working on something, or longer than that. Sometimes I've pulled all complete 24-hour shifts on working on stuff.
Now, in case this is the first time you're actually hearing of Lewis, he's the creator of Atop the Fourth Wall, a popular web-based series in which he reviews comic books in a comedic fashion. Now, after hearing me do a horrible job describing what your show is, what would you say your show actually is, if for a first-time viewer who just happens to be stumbling across you on the internet?
My show is where we look at the worst comic books ever made, recap them, and show the panels moving across the screen. Do the dialogue and funny voices, and make jokes at its expense. And sometimes I find time to add storylines to them, just to give something a little extra to people who want to have a reason to come back next week beyond just the funny jokes.
I gotcha, I gotcha. Um, Also, speaking about your show, and of course you yourself, many people actually know you as Linkara. How did that name come about, and what inspirations, helped you in developing your character as well as your name?
The name Linkara. When I was 14 years old, I wrote and self-published a bunch of fantasy novels. They're not very good, and I actively encourage people to avoid them because written by a 14-year-old, there might be some good ideas in there, but yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Obviously, my attitude and knowledge of how story structure and characters and whatnot work has evolved over time and gotten better, hopefully.
Now,
So if you are deadly curious, track down the third book. It's the one I'm least embarrassed by.
now I was actually going to ask
But
that.
I'm sorry, getting back to Linkara thing. Linkara is the name of the prophesized savior of the books, the Linkara, and so I just kind of stuck with it, and it became my screen name, which is pretty much a better one than my previous one, either Ruisu, which is just Japanese for Lewis, or Psyweedle.
Nice. Now, of course, speaking of the book, is there like a website that you'd like to drop in case you want to direct some fans that way by chance?
Not really, 'cause like I said, I don't really want fans to track them down, because it's like being a famous painter, and then someone tracks down the drawings you did in first grade.
I got you. Well, hey, they still become collector's items, man. So,